Hello, everybody. Welcome. Hopefully I'm not hearing the same feedback anymore, Kathleen. I'll see if I can go to my AirPods in just a minute. But until I do that, hopefully everybody's had a chance to review the minutes that are up on the screen. I'd love to get a motion when you're ready to adopt those, or if there's any changes, if you could let us know.
This is Shane. Motion to adopt.
Is there a second? Thank you. Any opposed? Okay. Well, thank you very much. So, Andrew, I'm not sure if we have any guests today we need to introduce or not.
There are a couple. Keisha Robinson is here from the VA.
Hi, Keisha.
Yeah. And Debbie Clooney is from my office. She's here with us today.
All right. Well, welcome to both of you. Glad you could join.
And I think everybody else is a regular attendee.
Okay. All right. I guess, Andrew, the first item on the agenda for today was just a preview of the isolation policy. I know you, Kathleen, you sent that out. I guess it was back on the 8th. Hopefully everybody's had a chance to look at it. I know I did. I know it's still a working process, and I think you were just looking to try to get any feedback the group may have at this point, Andrea. So I'll just turn it to you and let you take it where you want.
Okay, absolutely. So thank you so much. And Jim's correct. What we're looking for today is feedback on the policy. So when we started working on this policy earlier in the year, we came up with this plan, which essentially looks at COVID in sort of 3 risk levels. One is a low risk level when there's less than 10 folks who are COVID positive within the homeless community, then a medium risk or a high risk level. And really the issue for us is does the homeless service system have the capacity to isolate in-house with the existing shelter system? Do we need to be looking for some expanded space, or do we need something that's bigger than using hotel rooms to give us some expansion capacity? And so, a lot of this was informed by our experience over the last 2.5 years with COVID, in that most of the time, if we had anybody in isolation, it was very few people. We'd have 3 or 4 or 5. There were periods of time where we'd go up to about 10 or 11 folks. And we were thinking that there was a shelter that was going to be able to add into their facility isolation rooms to be able to take up to 10 folks in isolation. That's not a happening thing at this moment that we are aware of. And we knew that we were hopeful that in January, when we came up with this policy, that we would be able to have an ongoing relationship with a hotel if we needed essentially another 5-10 rooms. Our experience with Omicron in January, when we went from 2 years of maximum 10 or 11 people in isolation to over one weekend having 60 people in isolation. That was unmanageable in a hotel setting. We just had too many people, not enough staff. People were spread out across a large facility, and we didn't have the capacity to manage it. The good news was nothing bad happened, but it was very, very hard on staff. It was hard for the hotel. It was hard on the guests to have that many people. So our thinking when we were drafting this policy was that at a low risk, we would have the capacity to isolate in-house. At a medium risk, we wanted to convene a committee of people to be watching. Are we going to level off at this medium risk, or do we need to be preparing for a much higher level of isolation demand? So that if we needed to open up a specialized shelter to have the capacity to hold 30, 40, 60 or more people in it, we would start preparing to do that when we started seeing what numbers looked like when we had 10 people in isolation. So what we experienced in January was we went from 10 to 60 really fast. So yeah, Deb had put in the chat, Deb's done a lot of work with some of our numbers. We served 128 people in the first almost 2 years of the pandemic. And 102 of those people were in January and February of 2022. If that gives you sort of a sense of what January looked like for us.
What does it look like now, Andrea? What are the numbers today? Do you know?
I do. So we have not had the capacity to provide isolation services since April. So we don't have, there's no one in isolation. I do know that for the last 10 days, Bethesda Center has had to close because they had, I don't know how many total, but the last count I heard was they had 8 positive folks at Bethesda. So they closed the shelter to new admissions, and they closed the day shelter to outside folks, outside being not staying in their night shelter. And that way they could sort of isolate in-house and not risk more people bringing in virus who weren't already infected. So if we don't, my concern is if we don't have a actual workable plan, what the reality is that shelters are going to wind up having to shut down like Bethesda has, because they don't, we don't have the capacity to isolate outside of a mass shelter. So some of our shelters have better capacity to isolate people internally. So some of our shelters are not congregate shelters. They have individual rooms for family units. And they can typically isolate some folks internally if they have to. But the mass shelters, the 2 big ones being Samaritan and Bethesda, don't have the capacity at this point to isolate internally, unless they shut down like Bethesda did. So I don't control the document. Kathleen, if you scroll up, what we've sort of did in the policy, what's written so far is just some definitions of words that we want to use in the policy and be clear what we're talking about. And then looking at the isolation strategies. So I see in the box, in the chat, Shane asked, what have numbers looked like since February? We've been holding steady at pretty much very low requests. We've had maybe 3 or 4 requests from hospitals for isolation that we've had to say we don't have rooms available, until about 10 days ago when Bethesda had 8 people test positive. And then I have not heard that there's been any additional folks testing positive since that. And then I also see there's some questions about vaccine clinics. I know that the shelters continue to coordinate access to vaccines. We are not tracking who's getting vaccinated, who's not getting vaccinated. The state has some data on what vaccinations across the homeless population looks like statewide. And it looks like percentage-wise within the homeless population, the vaccination rate is slightly under the general population's vaccination rate. So as a continuum, we're still looking to answer a lot of questions. One is how or who is going to sort of step up and try and either build or take on some capacity internal to already operating COC programs to be able to offer some limited capacity for isolation when we have, ideally 10 or fewer people in need of isolation. So that's one of the questions. The other questions are, who are we going to look to staff the isolation shelter if we have to take it outside of an already existing shelter? For the last few years, United Way has been subcontracting with a private agency. They were a very small agency. United Way is not well staffed to run a 24-hour operation. The subcontractor had capacity to do it, but because they were so small, it was very hard for them. If we had more than 15 people in isolation, they had a very hard time being able to staff to capacity. So we need to look for either other vendors for us to work with or other models of providing staff support to people in isolation. And then the two big questions on the table are funding. Where's funding going to come from? Through the end of June, so a couple more weeks, the county is the intermediary for the continuum of care to access FEMA funds. I do not know that they will continue to do that after June 30th. So we may not have access to funds after June 30th. And then the other question would be, if we don't have internal capacity for isolating people, where else are we going to do it? I have had some folks who have called every hotel in Forsyth County. We found one hotel in Kernersville who's willing to work with us, but that presents additional challenges. Most of our folks are coming from either Novant or Baptist when they need to transition into isolation. And so it creates a transportation challenge both to get them to Kernersville and then back from Kernersville from that hotel. But that is a possibility, but it would give us up to 6 rooms for isolation, which is better than no rooms for isolation if we can overcome the transportation challenges. So what we're looking for today are if folks have, we are not this is the policy we've come up with. If we can think of better policies, if we can think of better procedures, other resources, other people to involve in the conversation, we are open to all and any input at this point.
Some pretty significant, outstanding questions yet to be answered.
So
depending on how you get answers, it may shape the policy.
Right. So, and a lot of our thinking was informed before we hit the reality that there were no hotels that we could access. So,
Andrea, this is Cynthia. Have you reached out to the public health folks? That's one.
We've been in constant conversation with public health.
Okay, and they don't have any money to put in the pot? Funding.
The county's position thus far is that they do not have funding to support the isolation. The county has been the intermediary for us to access FEMA funds, but beyond that, there has, and the last conversation I had with them, the county did not want to extend that relationship past June 30th.
Mm-hmm. And the second thing is the hospital systems. I think you said the hospitals called to find out where to put the folks.
Yep. So.
Well, I guess my thought is it's a public health issue. And so as the healthcare providers, they need to have a role in the conversation and help to find a solution. But that's just me.
Yeah, I think one of the challenges we've had as the homeless system throughout the pandemic is when we've put isolation plans on the table, we are able to connect with people inside the hospital system to work out procedures, but we haven't been able to get to people in decision-making roles to help actually develop the plan. So if anyone on the commission has ideas about who would be good people to connect to at either hospital system, that would be great, and we could really use that. I have reached out to the mayor's office and asked them to help make some connections for us as well.
Okay.
My other question, Andrea, was when Bethesda Center closed to just house the isolation people, what happened to everybody else?
They kept everybody who was currently at Bethesda. They just didn't take new admissions. Which what that means in our system is, I think everybody has been full, so there just hasn't been capacity for people to come into shelter. Were there vacancies anywhere in the system? With Bethesda closing, there could be vacancies that families or men could access, but Bethesda is the only shelter that has rooms for single women. So one of the challenges of having Bethesda close to new admissions is that we lose the only access to beds for single women that we have.
Okay, any other thoughts or questions for Andrea? All right. Well, Andrea, I know you've got the next topic as well. There's the Built for Zero for the vet goal. Wanted to give an update there.
It actually has my name on it, but we invited Keisha Robinson from the VA to talk a little bit. The Veterans Administration, the big one, has set a national goal of housing 38,000 vets by the end of the year. So I asked Keisha to come and talk to us a little bit about the VA's plan, and then we're going to wrap that into a goal setting for the COC.
Okay, great. All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Can you guys see that screen?
Yeah.
You can.
Okay, great. So again, I'm Keisha Robinson, the Coordinated Entry Specialist with the Salisbury VA. And I just wanted to make people aware of the 38,000 veterans goal that the VA Secretary McDonough placed at the beginning of the year. And some people have wondered about that number, 38,000, and that number just happens to be 5% over the number of veterans that we were able to permanently to place in permanent housing last year. So feeling like that goal is definitely achievable. So, but anyway, this slide will just kind of give you an idea of where we stand with the Salisbury VA. Let me take that off. Oops, sorry. Currently, the Salisbury VA has 28 counties in our catchment area, including Forsyth, obviously. And so as of the end of April, our number of veterans that we have placed in permanent housing is at 107. The goal for Salisbury is 353. So as you can see, we've got a ways to go before the end of the year. So we're actively trying to place an average of at least 35 veterans per month. So we're lagging behind by 246 veterans for the year. So hopefully we will be able to achieve our portion of the goal. But of course, the overall goal is 38,000 nationally. And then this slide just talks a little bit about our guiding principles about how we hope to be able to do that, achieving that goal. Of course, we want to house literally homeless veterans through our coordinated entry process and working with our partners in order to make that happen. We definitely want to honor veteran choice, recognizing the fact that veterans do tend to stay housed longer when we have included and recognized their choice in housing. So we definitely want to include that in our process. We want to lead with equity as well. Of course, making sure that our resources are distributed fairly. We want to provide supportive services, recognizing that our veterans oftentimes come with complex needs. So we want to serve them with trauma-informed practices. And then, of course, we want to continue to enhance our coordination with community partners, and that includes the COC, housing authorities, other entities in the city. Landlords, of course, we definitely need them. So we just want to continue to engage in working as a whole continuum. The VA definitely recognizes that we can't house veterans on our own. It does take a village to do this work. So we want to continue those partnerships and enhance them where we can. And then this next slide, just kind of, again, we want to make sure people know how to connect veterans to our services if they want to be connected. Of course, we recognize that there are some veterans who do not choose to engage with the VA. But for those who do, we want to make sure they know how to get connected. So this is our contact information for our outreach services. We do provide outreach at all three of our campuses, Salisbury, Charlotte, and Kernersville. And then the other numbers for the National Homeless Veterans Hotline, if veterans choose to call and speak with a counselor in that manner. And that's it. Any questions about anything?
This might be a dumb question, but when these goals you're laying out here are for what type of geographic footprint?
So again, Salisbury VA has 21 counties in our catchment area. And so that number, I think, was 353. That is for this Salisbury VA catchment area. So we, part of my role is to engage with the COCs within all of the catchment areas for the Salisbury VA. So I do participate in case conferencing and other activities in the communities to try to make sure that we are able to try to capture as many veterans as possible to provide services. So the national goal is 38,000. Salisbury, we're at 353. So.
Okay,
Keisha,
thank you.
Keisha, what are you finding is the biggest obstacle to meeting your goal?
Well, of course, probably like everybody else, we definitely need more landlords. We just are having difficulty finding properties, you know, that will work with some of our veterans. I mentioned that some of our veterans do have challenging things that they're dealing with. Their backgrounds sometimes are challenging. So it's just a real difficulty in finding some landlords. We have quite a few that work with us very well, but we can always use a lot more. So of course, you know, some of our veterans do come with things like mental health challenges and substance use challenges and that kind of thing. They sometimes have issues on their legal background. But of course, you know, with the comprehensive services that we provide, we try to, you know, match services with veterans, whatever those services are that they may need. So, but definitely back to your question, we definitely need more landlords. You know, we do have Section 8 vouchers as part of our HUD-VASH program. Of course, you know, those vouchers are a lot lower than the going rate for what some landlords can get from a private person for rent. So of course, you know, we're working on things to try to see if that's a possibility to, you know, try to get, you know, voucher amounts raised. We've had some challenges with that, obviously, but we do have people at the national level who are always trying to work to try to get those voucher amounts raised, because that's definitely a challenge. So those are some of the things that we're struggling with.
And has the VA considered building housing?
Well, we do have a project-based housing project that's that's just recently went under construction in Charlotte. It's supposed to be completed by the spring of next year. So I think that's going to be 40 units. So that's a start for us. So we definitely are looking at that as an option as well.
And are there more planned? Are there more planned?
I would hope so. I can't speak to that directly, but I certainly would hope so.
Okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Jennifer had a question in the chat. Is the city requiring voucher acceptance in any new housing in the developments that we are seeing downtown?
To my knowledge, the city does not require any specific landlord to accept vouchers. And that's one of the challenges that we're having, is that a lot of landlords just are not accepting vouchers at all. There are some communities that are exploring the possibility of putting in city ordinances that would prohibit housing providers from discriminating against tenants based on source of income, which is a protection for discriminating against people with housing vouchers. And I have not heard conversation about that being pursued here at this point. One of the other challenges we're having with our housing vouchers is that the fair market rate that's actually set by HUD is so low right now. Folks with housing vouchers can't compete in the housing market. And I did find out yesterday from one of my case managers that the fair market rent in Guilford County is actually over $100 more per month than the Forsyth County. I haven't verified that, but that's what one of my case managers was sharing with me, because she had folks who want to go look in Greensboro. So that's one of the other challenges. And Shriek and I have been working with HUD to try and contest what our fair market rate is set at. But HUD's telling us we can't adjust it until the new rates come out, hopefully very soon.
And Andrea, that is correct. We have had a few clients move to Greensboro because the amounts are higher in Greensboro. So it's usually easier to find something than it is here.
And Jennifer also asked, are any developers, I guess, receiving incentives or loans from the city?
I do know that some of the communities that I work with, they are offering incentives to landlords. They're, offering like a $500 extra bonus if they will accept one of our homeless individuals. So there are some cities that are doing that. I guess it depends on if the monies are available.
Right. And I think Jennifer's question was about, are the folks who are building new apartments in the downtown area receiving incentives from the city? That I don't know the answer to, but is a very good question and an important one to ask. And we are also, our COC does have funding to help incentivize landlords working with our folks. A lot of what we're doing is offering landlords the incentive that offsets the difference between what we can pay per month with HUD's fair market rate and what they are charging in the fair market, in the open market for the rent in that. But some of what we're seeing right now in the housing market is folks who we placed a year ago in housing at the HUD fair market rate. When their leases are renewing, the rent is going up $50, $60 a month. Sometimes we're seeing even over $100 a month changes in people's rent, and which makes it very hard. Many of them are still in subsidized programs, and that keeps them out of the program if we can't negotiate that rent back to a fair market. So we're also seeing that. All of those are great questions. I do want to refocus a little bit on the vets, because what I was hoping to do today, and part of why I tied this into our Built for Zero report, is we are working right now as a community on setting our Built for Zero goals that we'll be working on for the year. And I have been in conversation with some of our staff that work specifically with veterans about what we think would be a realistic goal for our community to contribute to the national goal. So the data we've been looking at is about how many vets are we housing every month. And it varies. Right now it's pretty low. We're looking at like 1 or 2 a month because just finding housing is so hard. But we have an average, over the last 2 years, we've had an average of 28 veterans on our by name list that we've identified as being literally homeless. So what we've been talking about is setting that as our goal by the end of the year to house 28 vets as part of our contribution to the 38,000 goal. So what we're hoping is that the commission will adopt the community level goal of housing 28 veterans by the end of 2022 as our goal.
Yeah, I think that sounds reasonable.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
And you said that was 20 for the year, Andrea? Is that what you said?
We
sorry,
have
what was the number again?
28.
28 for the year. Okay.
Yep.
Andrea, is that a stretch or is that conservative?
It's a little bit of a stretch given current conditions.
Okay.
In years past, I would have said that we can do that hands down easy. I mean, we're lucky if we're getting 2 or 3 people moved across all of our programs a month right now, because there's literally nothing open on the market that is affordable for folks who are at or below 50% of area median income, which are all of our folks. So even if they are paying rent on their own, there's nothing affordable for them.
Yeah, that's we keep coming back to that. That's that's really the big issue right now.
Yeah. So if everybody's in agreement, if we could have a vote to pass that, then that will become our official goal to work towards.
Okay. So the motion would be so we'll ask for a motion. I think you were asking for a goal of 28 for the calendar year 2022. I get a motion to that effect?
It's the calendar year 2022, so January to December?
Yep. Well,
right?
from now till December. So it's really 6 months. It's a 6-month goal for us.
Okay.
Yeah. We won't count the ones we've already had.
Well, you could, I mean.
we will count them. We will not count them in our goal. Our goal is from year forward.
Okay. I guess I'll move that we accept the 28 veteran goal for
the remainder of 2022?
For the remainder of 2022, yes.
Okay, great. Is there a second?
A second.
Okay, great. And any opposed to that? All right, we will consider that the goal, Andrea. So sounds like it is a stretch based on what's available today.
Yep. So, and next month in July, I hope to bring a proposed goal around how many chronic people we want to house by then. We're still working out what we think is a reasonable goal.
So that's an average of what, 4 point something per month?
I think so. It's 6 into 28.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Well, Keisha, thank you very much for joining us and
Absolutely.
for the information.
Thank you.
Thank you, Keisha.
All right. Well, do we want to change topics then? I think, Sharika, I think you've got the last 2 items that I see on the agenda, first being the case manager RFP. So let me turn it to you.
So we have 2 RFPs out right now, requests for proposals. The first is our annual notice of NOFA, and this is for the annual COC Continuum of Care Funds. Those funds provide, the eligible costs for those funds are acquisition, rehab, new construction, leasing, rental assistance. We also use it to fund our HMIS system and for admin costs and supportive services. Currently, the application period is open until July 6th. After the applications close on July 6th, the rating panel, the City of Winston-Salem rating panel will meet, review those applications, and they will be presented to the operating cabinet and then brought here for consideration. Right now, the official NOFA from HUD has not been released, so we are ahead of schedule on getting those applications in and getting everything prepared to go to council. Council approves us on Monday to actually apply for the funds through HUD. So that's where we are with the NOFA. Last year we did apply for bonus funds and received bonus funds in the amount of $308,000, and those were used for housing for domestic violence victims. So we are waiting for the information on the additional bonus funds for this year, and then we'll move forward with an additional RFP once those funds are available and we know what they're for. So that's for the NOFA. We have any questions about the NOFA?
So will those come back in the next meeting, perhaps, or soon?
Yes, those will come back to you in the next meeting so that you can approve those. And then right now we do have another RFP out that is due on June 20th. This is for PSH case management positions. We have been having conversations about the shortage of case management positions and the ability to use the PSH vouchers that we have for the COC. So the city applied for additional PSH case management positions last year as part of the NOFA and received funding for those. So we have put that out to the agencies to apply for those additional positions. And once they apply, that will also be brought back to council to go through and approve those as well.
Will those come to the commission or just go to the council?
Commission, they'll go to operating cabinet, commission, and then council. And that is for that RFP is for $110,000. And those are the two RFPs that we have upcoming.
Okay. So more to come at the next meeting, it sounds like. All right. Well, thank you for that update. Any question on that topic before we change to the next topic? Okay. All right. And then the last thing I'm showing is a June 23rd meeting with Home Base. Sure, yes. You've got that as well.
So as discussed previously, the city contracted with Home Base, an organization who provides services to look at the gaps in COC, in local COCs, various COCs, and we have them as our consultants. They came down last week and they did community interviews as well as interviews with persons with lived experience. They've met with local agency staff as well as with executive directors across different agencies. So now they want to meet with some Commission on Ending Homelessness individuals and others with that are part of the COC. So they are holding a meeting on June 23rd. This is to go over various data points as well as various gaps that they see in the system and offer some recommendations and receive some feedback on the work they've done so far. So Kathleen has that link. I believe she's already sent it out, but that is on June 23rd at 10 a.m.
Okay.
And Sharika, how long do you anticipate this lasting?
So the consultants are here until the end of July. Their final
no, the meeting on the 23rd.
Oh, okay. So that's going to last for, double check, I believe it's 2 hours.
2 hours. 2 hours. It's from 10 to 12.
Because what showed up on my calendar was until the next morning. So it's like 2 days.
So we had sent out a save the date originally,
Yes.
And then there should have been a more specific one with the actual link in it. So if you don't have a 2-hour meeting with a link coming from home base, let us know.
Okay.
Send it to you.
Yeah.
Thank
But
you.
we'd really like as many members of the commission to come to that meeting, because it'll be really important information about what they're seeing in our community and our COC that's sort of missing for us.
And is it in person or virtual?
It is virtual. They are not local, so it is virtual. They only flew in for last week, the last meetings last week.
Kathleen, I don't see that on my calendar. If you forwarded it to me, could you forward it to me again?
I'm going to resend it to everybody because I did put it from 10 a.m. to 12 a.m. So
Okay.
we'll change that.
So that would answer your question, Kathleen, as to
Yes,
why
that
I
answers
accepted
the
the
question.
meeting.
All right.
So the one other thing that I wanted to share, if Sharika, we're done with the home base update.
Yes, we're done.
Okay. So on Tuesday night, a community group called Folks for Good Housing, which is an advocacy group of a lot of people in our community who are interested in fair and affordable housing, held a Housing 101 forum, and our plan is to host 5 more of them every other month for the next 10 months. The next one will be in August, and we're looking at the one on Tuesday was sort of a broad overview framing what's our housing market look like? How did we get to this space right now where our housing market is? And the next 5 are going to focus on solutions that are opportunities for us to sort of change the dynamic in the housing market as a community. So if you weren't able to make the Tuesday night, we will eventually get those links up, and I'll make sure everybody gets a copy of the link. And then we'll make sure you're invited to the next one coming out. The plan is to do them Tuesday evenings from 6 to 8 at Forsyth House. We just don't have a room reservation yet, so I can't tell you when we're planning on the next one.
Andrea, that sort of brings back, I think when Derwin came a few months back, we had talked about maybe getting periodic updates on what's happening with the group focused on affordable housing. I think we could do that one of the next upcoming meetings.
Yes,
if they're available.
With Derwin and the Housing Coalition about when they could come back and give an update.
Okay. Any other topics, Andrea, or anybody else on the call? All right. Well, I appreciate everybody joining. I appreciate what everybody's doing for this cause, and I guess we'll never end it, but we can make it better, and I think we are. And so I appreciate what everybody's doing.
Yep.
All right. Well, you guys have a good rest of the day, and we'll talk again soon.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
This